Okay, so as we record this podcast early Thursday afternoon, we are still waiting for anything official from the mayor's office about the Seattle Police Chief, Shawn Barnes. Is he in? Is he out? Was he asked to resign and declined and now will be forced out? Anonymous sources inside City Hall started all of this when they released some information to a couple of media outlets saying that, in fact, he was about to be forced out. But again, nothing official from the mayor's office. And we've been working feverishly since very early this morning to confirm this independently and have not been able to. The Seattle Police Officers Guild president has sent me a couple of statements today. He too says it is bizarre how all of this is playing out. Now, again, to remind you, because you've been out of town, some people on vacation just tuning in, what went down Sunday night is what led to all this. So it was at the Bite of Seattle at Seattle Center. We had a mass shooting. We had a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old who opened fire on one another. The 15-year-old uninjured, he's in custody. The 19-year-old was shot and killed. And then we had several other people, bystanders, caught up in the crossfire, if you will. Total of 3 people killed, including the 19-year-old suspect, and at least 4 others hurt. One other person apparently had some minor injuries, and she was treated at the scene and did not need transport to the hospital. But it was a crazy scene. And then what happened after that? So that happened about 6 o'clock Sunday evening. It wasn't until nearly 11 o'clock Sunday night that the official press conference happened. And there was not, I should say, a great deal number of members of the media who were very displeased. They were all there, ready. And of course, I know some of these people from having worked with them over the years. I'm sure they were really hoping to have everything in the can by the 11 o'clock newscast on Sunday night. But it was not to be because, again, it was about 11 when this happened. And then it came out the next day that Chief Barnes was out of town. He was in Dallas attending a conference at the time. Um, but then it started to come out that he's apparently been out of town a lot. His wife and kids still live in Chicago, where his residence is. He rents an apartment when he's in Seattle during the week and is apparently out of town a lot on weekends. So there was tons of pressure on him and on the mayor and other city officials to say, what gives? This guy's making $360,000 a year and he's not here a lot, especially in the summer. Weekends, that's when everything kind of goes down, right? As evidenced by what happened this past weekend. So outside City Hall this morning, after it started to come out that Chief Barnes was either being pushed out, gonna leave on his own, whatever. There were members of the Black community, some prominent members of the Black community, the NAACP, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, with a group called 100 Black Parents that all showed up outside City Hall because they were mad. They like the fact that we have a Black police chief in Seattle, and they apparently support his direction for policing and public safety in the city, and they were not pleased to be finding out that because of what's happened since the shooting, that he's being asked to make an exit. So I, as I mentioned, was calling and texting with Seattle Police Officers Guild President Kent Liu this morning, trying to get confirmation of this. But he said they were still in the dark. He was seeing the same rumors, same, anonymous sources quoted by media outlets. But as of 11:15 this morning, President Liu with SPOG sent me this text. He says, nothing official. This is ridiculous, but this is coming from the same mayor's office that couldn't hold a timely press conference on Sunday. The mayor's office is just going to attract more heat over this. So my colleague who covers the city of Seattle for the Center Square Washington, Randy Diamond, spent the entire morning, and he's still there now, in Seattle at City Hall trying to get things figured out. It looked initially like there was going to be a press conference this morning in the lobby. They were setting up for that, and then nothing ever happened. And then some members of city council started coming out. And Randy was able to get an interview with one of the Seattle City Council members who was not pleased that they were not consulted about how this would all go down.
We heard rumors yesterday and we do not have confirmation. The public doesn't have confirmation. We need to know in either direction whether it's her intent to keep the chief or not. I will say that I am very supportive of the police department. They did a great job, and I've heard from constituents that feel like they did a great job on Sunday responding on the scene quickly, as did fire. Today, I am very concerned that we have not heard from Mayor Wilson whether she's going to fire our police chief, particularly at this point in time. And I will also say that it's my understanding that our crime numbers have decreased since the chief has been here. And so I don't know the reason or the rationale for why she would fire him if she is going to fire him. But either way, we need to know. It is unacceptable for this amount of time to occur without confirmation from her office as to whether or not we indeed are going to have Chief Barnes as our police chief, or what the plan is if he's not going to be.
So, again, nothing official from the city at the time we're recording this podcast for this Thursday afternoon. I would think by this evening something will be official. It's very bizarre how this is all played out, and frankly, kind of an embarrassment on the mayor's office from the people that have been texting and emailing me today saying they really can't believe how this is playing out.
Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Clouser, with the Center Square's Washington State investigative reporter, TJ Martin. Coming on the heels of a what's been called a mass shooting in the city of Seattle last weekend, in the aftermath, there was apparently a 5-hour delay in Mayor Katie Wilson addressing the press with the Seattle Police Department Chief Shawn Barnes. We learned this morning that apparently Shawn Barnes has been relieved of his duties as chief of Seattle Police. TJ, tell me, was the nearly 5-hour delay in communications after the shooting the reason that Shones was fired?
I think that there's a lot going on, and I think that what we're witnessing is the culmination of different issues and problems, systemic problems going on with structural command, leadership, and communication, and an understanding of who's responsible for what, and the ability to make decisions during a crisis. And so I I think that we're still watching the dust settle. But I think that there's a lot of finger pointing and people in elected office trying to avoid blame for something either they did or they didn't do or weren't responsible for. So that's really we're kind of for anybody who's watched the Maltese Falcon, we're at the end of the movie where they're all figuring out who the fall guy's going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this is all playing out in the aftermath of this shooting and how particularly all the attention is around this press conference and the apparent delay in doing so. I mean, notably, we've seen a lot of conflicts in the Wilson administration since she's taken office. A few different people are relieved of their duties, one being the parks director after taking a lot of trips out of state, some of those costs landing on local taxpayers. We recently learned that Shawn Barnes, the SPD chief, his primary residence is in Chicago, and he's frequently in and out of the state. He had plans to leave Washington for about a month and didn't plan to come back until sometime in August. It looks like now that he's being relieved altogether. TJ, I mean, a lot of attention is being placed on Barnes, Wilson, and then Governor Ferguson in the timing of this press conference. I mean, you got some public records back, I
Yeah.
believe, from the governor's office showing some text messages between him and Katie Wilson. I mean,
Yeah.
with three of these people kind of headlining this issue right now, who ultimately bears responsibility here?
I mean, I'll just say this about the text messages is that's Governor Ferguson sending a very clear message. It's not his monkey. It's not his circus. I think that that's just what's going on. He's saying this is not what I'm responsible for. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Kate Wilson. She's the mayor of Seattle. This was a shooting that took place at a food festival in the city that she runs and manages. And the police department is underneath the mayor's office, so which is why she's has the authority to let Barnes go. And I think that as far as the delay is concerned, the text message that she sent to Governor Ferguson said there was likely to be a public conference. That I feel like since my story came out yesterday, I feel like there's a lot of people missing the significance of that, where there's controversy over this thing because of the delay of 5 hours. This could she's suggesting that the delay could have been even longer. So people could have gone to bed, had no idea what was going on. And so the question is, what was the reason for the delay? And we don't know. But the reason why I think Governor Ferguson's office got these records back to me so quickly is because people were insinuating that the press conference had been delayed so that he could be there for a photo op. And I didn't watch the entire press conference. It didn't seem like Governor Ferguson said a whole lot. I think he just was asked to be there. He showed up and he's sitting around. He got there, I think, around 9, according to his communications director, and was sitting around there for an hour and a half and not even knowing if there was going to be a press conference. And so finally, there was one at like almost 11 p.m. And so the question that remains is, what was the delay? And something that's important to do a distinction. There's the media availability, but what also was delayed was the police briefing, where they were not providing information to the public about what had happened, what was being done, what can the public do to report, what is any description of the suspect. No information was coming out. And so the public was left in the dark for a critical number of hours, where somebody could have seen the suspect who's still at large and reported them to the police, and they could have been caught, or the suspect could have gone off and killed someone else and they wouldn't have known it was the same suspect. So this is all that's coming out. And I think that we still don't know what the reason for the delay is. There's so many reasons for the delay. Was it because, the police chief wasn't in the city at the time? He was out, I think, in Dallas. Was it because Kate Wilson didn't want to provide information, and when she actually tried doing it, it was inaccurate information? So what caused her to get inaccurate information? And did she delay it in order to wait for Chief Barnes to be there so she didn't have to deal with this whole thing on her own? Or did they come across information about the suspects that they didn't know they wanted released to the public for reasons that we could still be looking at?
Yeah, and at the time of the shooting, the police chief was at a conference in Texas, and then reporters were told as they were waiting hours for this press conference to take place that SPD was waiting on dignitaries to get there, seemingly referring to Barnes there. And I believe that the mayor's office has refuted those statements since. But I mean, this comes on the heels of broader communications issues within the Wilson administration. I mean, they're currently looking to replace the communications director. I believe the person that was previously in that position recently left the administration. The mayor frequently encounters issues with the local media, especially TV stations, in doing on-air interviews or them catching her in certain situations and then her just ending the interview on the spot. So, I mean, are we likely to see anything fixed from Barnes being relieved of duties, or is that more so just deferring blame from the broader communication issues facing the mayor?
I mean, I think it really is going to have to come down to voters making de- making decisions about who they want in public office, because this is just a fact. Kate Wilson had no prior experience governing even a small little town like Roslyn in central Washington. She has no prior experience managing or leading anything of this of a city of this size. She wasn't even paying her own bills. Her father was financially supporting her. So I think the question is, why? I would want to hear from for somebody who voted for her, supporters, saying, why did you think she was going to be able to handle this well? Because we're dealing, I mean, there's the dynamics are really fascinating. You've got her with no background experience in leadership whatsoever. You've got Barnes, who has a history of being at different police departments and having controversial stuff going on at all these different places. Then you've got Governor Ferguson, who's been in politics for decades, and he was on the King County Council. He was our state attorney general. Now he's our governor. And so it's interesting to see the different responses. Barnes freaks out in front of a reporter, and it one of the most heated confrontations I've ever seen between a public official and a reporter. You've got Kate Wilson, who's basically, like you're saying, gone radio silent on stuff. And Governor Ferguson is basically the only one that's communicated with me. And based on, I got the most detailed timeline of the events, of an event from a communications director. I've never seen anything like it. They gave very precise times for where he was and what he was doing. So I think they're just saying the message that this is not our problem, you know. And so I see a lot of people wishing it was, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. I'm not getting a public record from the governor's office 2 days after I asked for it because they did something wrong. So
Yeah. And interesting that you got the records back so quick when in other
right.
cases it takes the governor's office months to deliver records. But I mean, you're right. This is Katie Wilson's first time being in an elected position. Nonetheless, mayor of Seattle will be the most populous city in the state of Washington and a hub across the Pacific Northwest. Um, she still has 3 years left in her term. It'll be interesting to see what happens over those next 3 years, whether she goes the full term or makes a different decision before then. But TJ, appreciate you covering this and getting the records that you did. For anyone hoping to read TJ's story, you can catch it at thecentersquare.com. Otherwise, thank you for joining us for another episode of Washington in Focus.
Now, the Seattle Storm. I've never been to a WNBA game, I confess, but the one last night was apparently a memorable one. It was the Indiana Fever in town for the Seattle Storm game, and there were teenage fans there that were wearing XXXY athletics shirts, some of them holding signs in support of Sophie Cunningham, who plays for the Fever. So she was in town. And if you don't follow social media, I'll just tell you, Sophie Cunningham has been very outspoken in recent weeks about supporting the protection of girls in sports, including basketball, that there shouldn't be biological males, there should not be athletes playing in girls' sports. She's gotten a lot of criticism. She's also, gotten a lot of attention on the national media stage. So when she was going to be in town last night, given the fact we have this initiative appearing on our ballot, there were a lot of folks here who were like, hey, there's an opportunity to show up there at the game in support of Sophie Cunningham and let her know we really appreciate her stance on this on the national stage. So there was a young woman there, a 16-year-old girl by the name of Annalie Wilson. Now, Annalie is going to be a junior this next year at Eastmont High School in Wenatchee. She, when she was in 8th grade, became the first face in Washington state for the protection of girls' sports. She lost out, earning the top placement in a statewide competition, a track competition, to a trans athlete. And her family was brave enough at that point, even though she was very young at the time, to say, we want to speak out against this. And she was the encouragement for others in our state and then nationally who have spoken out about this subject since then. So Annalie was at the game last night at the Seattle Storm and holding up a sign in support of Sophie Cunningham and saying, thank you for speaking up to protect girls' sports. Well, that did not go over well with the co owner of the Seattle Storm, a woman by the name of Celeste Keaton, who I don't have it on video, but according to multiple people that I've spoken to today and social media sources have posted, that the co-owner of the Storm, Celeste Keaton, cursed out Annalie and some other girls who were there sitting in the front row saying, thank you, Sophie, for supporting girls' sports, calling them at one point effing insane. So Annalie left in tears. Brandy Cruz with the Undivided podcast was kind enough to share this video with us today so that we could show you her conversation with Annalie and another girl who was there in support of the protection of girls' sports at that game last night. So here's part of that conversation after the game.
We were just sitting there with our signs that said, like, we love Sophie, like, thank you, Sophie, for speaking up. And so we were holding on, just watching the game. Again, like, we were being super great. We hadn't said anything to anyone else. We were being super respectful. We were just holding our signs and cheering for both teams. And this lady, older lady, comes up to us. And she comes up to us, and at first I think she's going to be nice. And then she asks, like, what are you guys doing? Or something like that. And then it was like, Jesus loves everyone. That's what she told us. And I was like, oh, I know. Like, I'm religious. Like, I know. Like, I know.
Nice.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, I hope Jesus can forgive you for what sin you've done. And, like, something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane. And that we
And
needed
she's like,
to
and she went like
Yeah.
this. Insane.
Yeah.
She's like, you better stop this.
And stop. Yeah.
And
For you guys
I
to
hope
come
God
here
can
and
save
told
you.
us.
I did reach out to the Seattle Storm for a comment on how things went last night. I got no response to my phone message or email. If I receive that, we'll share that with you in tomorrow's episode. But Let's Go Washington did provide a response to what transpired at the game last night. And this is a comment from Hallie Balch with Let's Go Washington. She said, adults attacking high school sports for supporting Sophie Cunningham is pathetic. These girls had the courage to show up. The grown adults that curse them out and verbally harass them should feel pretty proud for making high schoolers cry. Very brave. The no hate crowd keeps showing us who the real bigots are. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot more on this in the days to come. Hopefully, any response from the Seattle Storm, I can provide you an update in tomorrow's episode.